Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the most comprehensive Hindu analysis on YouTube. So let's start our discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have chosen 9 important articles, and today we will cover them as comprehensively as possible by going beyond the articles as well, so that you don't have to go back and read the paper again. But before we start, I have a very important announcement. If you're looking to prepare for the upcoming prelims or even for 2027, then Unacademy is providing you the best possible offer, as our subscription is now available with a flat 50% discount. You can enroll for our courses at just 19,999, and I'm told that the offer will end tonight. And if you enroll within the offer period, you'll also get up to 6 months of free extension. Those interested, please click on the link provided in the video description. And don't forget to enter the code IAS English, because on the subscription page, you will see a different price. In order to get the flat 50% off with the 6-month free extension, you need to use the code IAS English. So for further details, please check out by clicking on the link provided in the video description. And another important notice for our aspirants: we just have 15 days left for you to complete your form filling for the upcoming prelims exam. Since a lot of new changes have been introduced, many students are facing difficulties and challenges. So, to help out those aspirants, Unacademy is providing free mentoring counseling sessions. So, there is a Google form provided in the video description. Please fill out your details and we will get in touch with you to guide you and handhold you through the form filling process. And if you want the PDF of today's session, please join our official Telegram channel. It would be shared over here after the session ends. So, with this, let's get started and look at the first topic. On page number 6, the Hindu carries an editorial that focuses on the topic of the right to free speech and expression, which is a guaranteed fundamental right under Article 19 of the Indian Constitution. This topic is in news because of a recent controversy which has broken out with regard to a movie, a upcoming movie that is produced by Netflix. So this movie, which stars Manoj Bajpayee, it is titled as Guskar Pandit. And the movie title has become a controversial point, and it has led to a political storm, with UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath even ordering the police to register a FIR against the makers of the movie for using offensive words in the title of the movie, which can cause harm or which can offend the sentiments of a particular caste or a community. On these grounds, the filmmakers have issued an apology. They have even agreed to stop all the publication material, and they are even considering to rename the movie itself if required. So, such state led intervention and such restrictions which are being placed on the freedom of speech and expression, on the freedom of creative art, itself raises this fundamental point as to whether freedom of speech and expression is being curbed, not just by vigilante groups, but sometimes even by the state itself. So let's dive a little deep into the topic. I would like to go beyond the article as well here. Now, let's look at the title of this movie itself and try to understand why the title is so controversial. The term Guskar refers to corrupt. So essentially translates to a corrupt Pandit. Now, in general, the meaning of Pandit, even according to Sanskrit verses, refers to a scholar, refers to someone who's well read, well educated. It is not specifically pointing towards any caste or community in general. But however, in day to day colloquial language, Pandit is often equated with the Brahmin community. So here the allegation is that the movie makers have tried tarnishing the image of the entire Brahmin community by labeling the movie as corrupt Pandit or Guskar Pandit, which essentially becomes a sort of a attempt to stereotype an entire community and blame the entire community as a corrupt community. So that is where the controversy originates from. But as I said, you need to look at the broader meaning as well. In general, the term Pandit not necessarily refers to the Brahmin community. Right? It refers to someone who's well educated, someone who's a scholar. And again, nobody has yet seen the movie. No one knows as to what exactly is the content, whether it is actually defaming an entire community on caste lines. There is no clarity on this because the movie is yet to release on Netflix. But even before that, just when Netflix started promoting the movie with this title, the controversy already erupted, and the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, Yogi Adityanath, has ordered the police to file a case. And this has led the movie makers to take a step back, and this is where the controversy comes into picture. Now, the point is, if you look at the Indian Constitution under Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause A, freedom of speech and expression is a guaranteed fundamental right. This includes the fundamental right to creative expression through various art forms. It could be through a movie, through any other form of visual entertainment, through paintings, through writings, right, or even through speeches. So, any form of free speech and expression is protected under Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause A. But of course, this fundamental right under Article 19, which also includes the right to peaceful assembly, the right to association, the right to movement, etc., this right is not an absolute right. It's not an absolute right. It comes with a set of reasonable restrictions. The state can restrict these fundamental rights on certain reasonable grounds. And the response of the state when such rights are being curbed, it has to be proportionate. It has to be used minimally only on certain grounds as specified under Article 19, Clause 2 of the Indian Constitution. These reasonable restrictions include any threat to the interests of sovereignty, integrity of India, the security of the state, friendly relations of India with foreign states, any threat, direct threat to public order, which could incite violence on the streets, any concern related to decency or morality, or contempt of court, defamation, or incitement to an offense. So the courts, the Supreme Court and High Courts, have dealt in this matter in several cases in the past. And each time the court observation has been very clear that the application of these reasonable restrictions has to be limited, has to be proportional. Now, if you take the controversy of Guskar Pandit, this matter never reached the doorstep of the court. The movie makers didn't even try defending themselves against the controversy and the pressure being exerted by the state government. The moment the chief minister made these statements and ordered the police to file an FIR, the movie makers already took a step back. So the matter has never reached the court. If at all the matter had to be decided, the right authority to decide upon the constitutional validity of this would be the courts, the Supreme Court and the High Court, which enjoy the original jurisdiction. But this is where we need to look at similar incidents in the past. See, it's not about one party or one government. There have been many, many such cases in the past as well. Starting right from the works of Salman Rushdie, how satanic verses was banned in India, or the paintings of M.F. Hussain, how it was made controversial, including threats of violence, acts of violence to prevent the paintings from being displayed. Or even recent cases like how the movie Kerala Story triggered a huge controversy and in states like West Bengal there were restrictions brought in over the screening of the movie itself. We also saw this with Padmavat, where the sentiments of a community was allegedly hurt, and based on these claims based on the threat of violence, the state essentially crumbled, and it failed to prevent uh, the snatching of the freedom of free speech and expression. And even before the matter reaches the doorsteps of the courts, the harm or the damage has already been done because this is essentially leading to the doctrine of chilling effect where the threat of economic loss, the threat of harm to reputation, the threat of legal action, criminal legal consequences, the possibility of facing criminal charges or jail term and being dragged through courts, this fear itself will cripple the right to exercise the freedom of speech and expression. And that is essentially what you see in various instances in the past as well. So the state has a duty, it has an obligation to protect uphold this basic right. Now, see, whether you agree with a movie maker or not, whether you agree with the content or not, doesn't matter. Whether you agree with a book or a painting, what it is depicting, right? Every individual exercises this right, and you have an equal right to criticize it, to condemn it, to provide counter arguments against it. But calling for outright bans and issuing threats and using the threat of violence to try and bring a ban on the screening of a movie is something which essentially erodes the right to free speech and expression. And this is something which has repeatedly happened. And it's not just because of the vigilante groups and the pressure groups. Sometimes even political parties and governments, they cave in under the pressure, or they even use these issues to score political points. And this is where fundamental right under Article 19 gets eroded. It is for the courts to decide on this matter. Now, let's say in this particular movie itself, since no one as of now knows as to what is the content of the movie, without even seeing or without even bringing the matter to court, the harm has already been done. We saw similar things happening with movies like Kerala Story. Again, you need not agree with the movie, you need not believe in what the movie is showing. But you can't take away the right of the movie maker to show what they want. Of course, there are certain reasonable restrictions, but beyond that, any form of art, any form of creative expression should be allowed to flourish in a democratic free society. And you will have an equal right to disagree with it, to counter it, and criticize it if you want. But calling for bans using the threat of violence and intimidation to ensure that the art form is not even brought into the public domain, that marks the death of freedom of speech and expression. So that is something we take away from this incident. And what is unfortunate in the case of Guskar Pandit is that the state government itself, which actually has a constitutional obligation to uphold freedom of speech and expression, has taken matters into its own hands, threatened the movie makers with a FIR, and the possibility of the criminal charges, of course, will deter anyone, and they have taken a step back. So that is a concern being expressed in this editorial. How easy it is in India to cripple freedom of speech and expression through various indirect methods, through pressure tactics, through intimidation and fear. And the matter doesn't even reach the doorstep of a court, whereas those who are being blamed or those who are being held accountable for this, they're forced to take a step back without even defending their right to free speech and expression. So, based on this, please take up a practice question. Sentiments cannot be allowed to trigger a criminal process against controversial art. Art form might be controversial. Art is meant to push the society to introspect, to raise questions, to trigger debate. It is meant to be offensive sometimes. It is meant to trigger your passions and emotions. That is the true purpose of any art form, not just movies, or it could be for any art form. It could be for satire, for caricatures, cartoons. They all serve a vital purpose in a society. They hold a mirror to the society to show the flaws in the society that exists. And if you try to curb that, if you try to take away that right, and that marks the end of a free society. So this is something which has happened repeatedly over years, over decades under different governments. And it is quite unfortunate to see how easily governments cave in to the pressure from vigilante groups and pressure groups. And sometimes, as I said, governments itself have taken it upon themselves to intervene and try to harm the rights of the movie makers or the artists. So, what do you think about this? It is a delicate, sensitive topic, but let me know your views, your take on this particular topic in the comment section. Now, let's move on to the next article. There's a very interesting article today on the Kimberley process. So, this is a great opportunity for you to understand what is the Kimberley process, why is it important for prelims and mains. The Kimberley process is a global framework for regulating the mining and trade of diamonds, specifically conflict diamonds, to ensure that conflict diamonds, also known as blood diamonds, are not mined and traded in the global market, and to prevent the harm that arises out of conflict diamonds and ensure that the global diamond trade is based on ethical diamond mining. That is the whole purpose of this framework. It's an international multilateral effort which includes multiple countries, and it's a tripartite process. It's a tripartite arrangement consisting of few governments, consisting of few industries, and as well as the civil society. So there are different stakeholders who are part of this international framework called the Kimberley process, which is responsible for regulating the domain of diamond trade. So I'm sure many of you would have heard the term blood diamond. You might have even seen the popular Hollywood movie by Leonardo DiCaprio. It very well depicts as to what are blood diamonds or conflict diamonds. See, in a conflict zone, particularly in African countries, rebel groups, insurgents, sometimes even state actors in collusion with private investors, they have used violence as a mechanism to gain control over diamond, which is a very precious commodity. They even employ child soldiers. They fuel civil wars just to gain control over diamond resources, particularly in African nations. And this has been seen repeatedly in southern African countries and even in Central African countries. So, diamond which is mined through war in order to fuel the violence and insurgency and the civil war, in order to profit certain entities like a military dictatorship or maybe a private diamond firm. Such diamonds which are stained with blood, the blood of innocent people, sometimes even children and women. Such diamonds are referred to as blood diamonds or conflict diamonds, which are originating from a conflict zone. In fact, the entire conflict is centered on the diamond business, the illegal diamond mining. So, regulating and prohibiting the entry of such diamonds into the market is the main purpose of the Kimberley process. So, when was it established? The basic facts can be very important for your prelims. It was established in the year 2000, led by Southern African countries. Southern African countries, including Botswana, South Africa, and the others, they took upon the initiative to deal with blood diamonds. And in 2000, the Kimberley process was initiated. Around 37 countries joined initially. And in 2003, they brought out a certification scheme, which is popularly known as KPCS, Kimberley Process Certification Scheme. So today, any legal diamond which is mined, polished, and traded in the global markets, it must have a KPCS certificate. If it doesn't have a KPCS certificate, it cannot be traded in a legal manner. It would essentially be illegal diamond trade. So, for any consignment of diamonds, be it a rough diamond which has just been mined, which is being exported, or a diamond which is being cut and polished, and then which is being sold in the markets as a jewelry, throughout the entire supply chain, the diamond consignment should mandatorily carry this certificate called the KPCS certificate, the Kimberley Process Certification Scheme. This means the diamonds have been mined legally and ethically, and they are not part of the conflict diamonds. And this is something the Kimberley process implemented from 2003 onwards. Today, it has 16 participants. There are 60 members comprising of governments, industries, and the civil society. As I told you, it's a tripartite arrangement involving few concerned countries and stakeholders like India as well. India plays a critical role in the diamond supply chain. Many African countries are part of it. Russia is part of it. So these are the major countries which play a big role in the diamond market. They're all members of the Kimberley process. Along with them, there are few important industries that play a role in the diamond supply chains, private industries, and even civil society groups that are concerned about human rights. They are also members of the Kimberley process. So in total, there are 86 countries, 86 governments which are part of it, along with several entities, private entities, and civil society organizations. So, in total, they account for 99.8% of the global diamond production. So, Kimberley process, it includes all the stakeholders who are part of the entire diamond supply chain. That's why it becomes a very legitimate and the most universal platform to regulate the world of diamond trade and diamond mining. Now, there's something very important you need to understand about diamond supply chains. You can anticipate a question on India's role in diamond supply chain. So, to understand this, you need to look at the source of diamonds in the world. Which are the leading producers? Where is most of the diamond mined in the world? The top producers include countries such as Angola, which is an African country, then Botswana, again, an African nation in southern Africa, Canada from North America, then Congo is a major producer. You also have Namibia in the south western part of Africa, and of course, Russia. Russia has plenty of diamond deposits in the Far East region, in Siberia, particularly in the Kamchatka Peninsula. So these are the world's leading diamond producers. They account for 85% of global diamond production, both in terms of value and in terms of quantity. Now, where is this diamond going? Because the diamonds which are mined legally under the Kimberley process, right, they are all rough diamonds or they are basically pre-polished diamonds and they're not perfectly suited for making gems and jewelry and it's not suited for the jewelry market. So this has to be cut into the perfect size. It has to be polished to give that shine. So this is where India plays a pivotal role in the supply chain. India purchases 40% of the global diamond production, 40% of global diamond imports. The rough diamond import coming from these countries comes to India because India plays a critical role in the middle section of the supply chain, especially in diamond hubs like Surat in Gujarat and Mumbai, where most of the trade happens. These are the two big diamond hubs of India. Surat is where all the cutting and polishing takes place. That's where the skilled artisans and the industries are present. And Mumbai acts as the market and the port facility. So these are the hubs of India's diamond trade and diamond uh, cutting and polishing. And India ends up buying 40% of global rough cut diamonds. So from India, once the cutting polishing is done, the final product goes to various destinations where there is a huge demand for diamond. This includes China, because diamonds are used not only for jewelry and aesthetic purposes, it is also used in industrial applications as well. China, then Hong Kong, United Arab Emirates, Israel, United States. These are your top markets, the top destinations where diamond consumption is at the highest. So, understanding this entire supply chain is critical. So, India is right in the middle and playing a critical role in diamond cutting and polishing. Now, in 2026, India has a great opportunity to use the Kimberley process to reform the global diamond market, to introduce some much needed changes in the Kimberley process. Because this year, India is holding the chair position. As a key member of the Kimberley process, India currently holds the chair position for this year, which gives India the leadership role to bring together all the other stakeholders and try and reform the diamond sector to ensure that conflict diamonds never reach the markets and ensure that the human rights atrocities which are committed in the name of diamond mining and diamond production is completely curbed in an effective manner. That is a role that India can play this year as we hold the chair position at the Kimberley process. Now, what are the problems that exist with Kimberley process? There are few shortcomings. Let's say there is a mains question asked on this. Since India is holding the chair this year, there might be a question on what India can do, or what is the leadership role that India can play at the Kimberley process. First and foremost, the biggest challenge with Kimberley process is that the definition of conflict diamonds is very narrow. Under Kimberley process, only those diamonds which are being mined under the control of rebel groups and insurgents, only such diamonds are considered as conflict diamonds. Let's say in a country like Congo, where a civil war might be taking place. If rebels and insurgents are controlling the local diamond mines, and if they are abusing the local population, using them to mine the diamonds and profiting from it to fuel their war, to fuel their insurgency, their rebellion, only such cases and instances are classified as conflict diamonds. But what if there is state sponsored conflict diamonds? What if there is a government, an authoritarian government, a military dictatorship in Africa, which is employing the same methods, violating human rights, and mining diamonds in a illegal, unethical manner, just to make profits out of it, and just to perpetuate the violence and control, the political control in the country? Those diamonds are currently not covered as conflict diamonds. This reminds me of one particular case involving the Central African Republic. In the Central African Republic, there was a clear instance of state involvement in fueling violence in diamond rich areas so that the state could establish its authoritarian control and mine diamonds for profits. So, based on these accusations, in 2013, the Central African Republic was dismissed from the Kimberley process, meaning it was completely boycotted from global diamond trade. But because of the political support, the diplomatic support it got, it was brought back into Kimberley process in 2024. So Central African Republic did not face any consequences as the process does not cover state sponsored violence which is resulting in conflict diamonds. It only deals with diamonds mined under the control of rebels and insurgents. It doesn't focus on any crony capitalist nexus between a military dictatorship and private capitalists who might be fueling a civil war to produce conflict diamonds. So these aspects and angles are not covered at all under the current definition. It is only restricted to diamonds mined in areas which are under the control of rebels and insurgents. So it absolves states of the responsibility. And this is something which affects human rights. And conflict diamonds still get produced under state control in African countries, especially. So probably India could play that role of a leader, bring consensus on this topic, and widen the definition of conflict diamonds. That is something India can consider. Second, the certification process, which is which is prone to frauds, can be completely digitized under India's leadership, especially by introducing blockchain based certification, which can be tamper proof. Because there have been recorded instances where the KPCA certificate has sometimes been tampered with fraudulent data, and conflict diamonds have still been entering the global markets. So, India can provide leadership to these countries and ensure the digitization of the KPCS certificate using blockchain technology so that it is tamper proof, where the right tagging and certification is done in order to ensure that the certificates cannot be forged. The fraudulent activity can be completely curb the frauds related to the Kimberley Process certification scheme. This is something India can push as India will host the Kimberley Process this year. Then, apart from this, India can also display leadership at the global south and highlight how the diamond industry can contribute to livelihoods, how it can contribute to community development and assist the African nations in particular to help achieve their developmental goals. Now, one reason why Surat is a well developed region is because of its diamond cutting and polishing industry. How India has translated these economic opportunities into results, developmental results. How India has made socio-economic gains by focusing on legal diamond industry. This is a lesson India can offer to African nations. Maybe we can even set up training and capacity building centers in Africa, in southern parts of Africa or central and eastern parts of Africa. India can play that leadership role as part of our African diplomacy, engage with the global south countries, and set up these training facilities and work with those governments to translate the economic opportunities into socio-economic gains, help them achieve their SDG goals, translate this into livelihood opportunities for the local communities, provide for better local economic development, and assist these African nations. This will also cement India's role as a leader of the global south. So these are the opportunities that lie ahead for India as we chair the Kimberley process for this year. So please take up this practice question. As chair of the Kimberley process for 2026, India can steer meaningful reforms in global diamond governance. Discuss. Now let's move to the next topic. On page 14, there's a very important development with regard to Israel and Palestine. Israel has made a very controversial move with regard to the West Bank territory in occupied Palestine. And this move of Israel, which will bring out some legal changes, has triggered a huge controversy, and several Muslim nations have openly criticized and condemned Israel's actions. So let's quickly understand what's happening here. The Security Cabinet of Israel has brought out few new changes, new reforms that will apply for the land related issues, building construction related issues in West Bank territory. West Bank is one part of occupied Palestine which remains under the illegal occupation of Israel. So in West Bank, Israel has been pushing illegal Jewish settlements from a very long time. This is in violation of international law. This is against the principle and spirit of the two state solution to which Israel was supposed to be committed. So Israel has been enabling the establishment of illegal Jewish settlements in West Bank And now it has eased the process through some legal changes, which will make it easy for the Jewish settlers to illegally occupy Palestinian land and territory in West Bank. So that's why several Muslim nations have come together and adopted a resolution to criticize Israel as it is violating the two state solution and undermining the right to self determination of the Palestinians. Countries like Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Egypt, Indonesia, Jordan, many others, they've come together to criticize these changes that Israel is trying to bring in. Now, let's dive a little deep into this topic and understand what are these occupied territories that Israel is holding? What is its international status? And what are these illegal Jewish settlements? And what changes are being brought out by the Israeli government right now? That is something you need to understand. See, in 1947, to address the Israel Palestine question, the United Nations had proposed the partition plan, which is nothing but your two state solution or the two state plan, to basically divide the then Palestinian British Mandate region into two nations, Israel and Palestine, one for the Jews, one for the Palestinian Arabs. But this plan was never implemented because in 1948, Israel unilaterally declared independence in violation of the UN plan. Unilaterally declared independence, and that is what triggered the first Arab Israel war. Several Arab nations came to the support of Palestine as Israel was acting unilaterally with the backing of Western powers such as United Kingdom and United States. So, with the backing of UK and US, Israel unilaterally declared independence, and this is what triggered the first conflict between the Arab states and Israel, where many Arab nations, particularly Egypt, Jordan, Syria, along with the support of the other Muslim nations in Middle East, North Africa, they went to war with Israel. So, in the 1948 war, Israel significantly expanded its territory, and it actually expanded its territory much more than what UN had provided under the partition plan. It even ended up occupying some parts of Palestinian territory in West Bank and Gaza. Some parts of the territory was taken by Israel in the 1948 war. But much of Gaza during the 1948 war was occupied by Egypt. Egypt primarily took control of the entire Gaza Strip that you know today. It came under Egyptian control following the 1948-49 Arab-Israel war. While Israel expanded the territory by taking some areas in Gaza and West Bank, much of the Gaza Strip that you know today came under Egyptian control. Then the West Bank region came under Jordanian control, which was then known as Transjordan. The country of Jordan today, which was referred to as Transjordan then, which lies next to the Dead Sea, next to the Jordan River, right? It took control of West Bank and it was administering the Palestinian territory. So the main Palestinian territories where the refugees were pushed into after the Nakba, the catastrophe. The catastrophe is nothing but Israel declaring independence and resulting in violence against the Palestinian Arabs, where Palestinians were evicted, thrown out of this region. So Palestinians marked this event as the Nakba, the catastrophe, where they were turned into refugees in their own land. So most Palestinians were sheltered in Gaza and West Bank, which came under Egyptian and Jordanian control, and Israel expanded its control by taking some of the Palestinian territories. Then came the second war, the 1967 war, the Six-Day Arab-Israel War. In the Six-Day Arab-Israel War of 1967, Israel significantly expanded its control and defeated all the Arab states because of its military modernization, formidable defense capabilities, and the immense support in terms of money and weapons and diplomatic support it got from US and UK. It easily managed to defeat the Arab states in 1967 war. So after defeating these Arab states, Israel took full control of the Sinai desert that belongs to Egypt, the Sinai Peninsula, which is strategically so important because of its location near the strategic Suez Canal, came under Israeli control. Then Israel fully took Gaza from Egypt. Since then, Gaza came under Israeli control. The whole of West Bank that you see here, including Jerusalem, which was under Jordanian control, administered by Jordan, completely came under Israeli control. And Israel even defeated Syria and took full control of the Golan Heights that you see in the map here. Now, these are the territories which are referred to as occupied territories. But however, the status of Sinai Desert or Sinai Peninsula changed very soon. In 1979, Egypt made peace with Israel by signing the Camp David Accords, which was negotiated by the United States. The US acted as a mediator, and through the Camp David Accords in 1979, Egypt agreed to make peace with Israel. It became the first Arab nation to recognize Israel and establish diplomatic ties. So it ended the decades of hostility. And in return, Israel returned the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt. So now the Sinai Peninsula is back with Egypt since 1979. But the other territories you see here, Gaza and West Bank, including Jerusalem, Golan Heights, they're all referred to as occupied Palestinian territories. This is the international status, even recognized by UN Security Council and the UN General Assembly. Even countries like India, even the close allies of Israel, including US and UK, all the major powers recognize these territories as Israeli occupied Palestinian territories. The territories which are supposed to be part of a future Palestinian state, which have been illegally taken by Israel, they are recognized as occupied territories. Now, in these occupied territories, Israel cannot push its Jewish settlements. That would be illegal and against international law. But Israel has been known to do this repeatedly. So, day by day, Palestinian territory and land has been snatched away with state support for the Jewish settlements, which are expanding in these territories, particularly in West Bank. Later, Gaza came under the control of the extremist outfit Hamas following its election victory in 2005 2006. By then, Israel retreated from Gaza, and since then, it has remained under Hamas control. But something interesting happened in 1990s. In 1993 and 1995, the Oslo Accords were signed between the government of Israel and the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which until then was the primary militant extremist organization fighting for the liberation of Palestine from Israeli occupation. So the PLO leader Yasser Arafat negotiated with then Israeli Prime Minister, and the negotiations were primarily mediated by Norway. The talks mainly were held in Oslo. That's why these accords are referred to as the Oslo Accords. Though they were signed in Washington and in Egypt, respectively, they're referred to as Oslo Accords because the secret talks between PLO leaders and Israeli leaders was facilitated by Norway in Oslo. So, under the Oslo Accords, Israel agreed to recognize the PLO as the legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. And PLO agreed to end its violence and extremism and recognize Israel. And this paved the way for the establishment of a Palestinian Authority, the PA, based out of Ramallah, which is the administrative capital. Ramallah is where the Palestinian Authority is based out of, for which elections are also held. And essentially, the PLO transformed into a political entity, an administrative entity with global legal recognition. And Palestinian Authority were supposed to control and govern these areas, both West Bank and Gaza Strip. Though it did not recognize the independence of Palestine, it gave for self governance. It gave for some degree of autonomy and some subjects where Palestinian Authority would exercise control. So the Palestinian Authority, as per Oslo Accords, is supposed to administer West Bank and Gaza. But since Hamas won the elections and took control of Gaza, Palestinian Authority's control has largely been restricted to West Bank. Now, under the Oslo Accords, Israel ended up basically backstabbing the Palestinian cause and the Palestinian movement. Though these commitments were made, in reality, such control was never given to the Palestinian Authority. What Israel has done through the Oslo Accords, it has divided West Bank into three areas that you can see in the map here: Area A, B, and C. The true control of Palestinian Authority is largely restricted to Area A, which is basically around 18%. Hardly 18% of West Bank territory is under 100% Palestinian control. The two subjects like land, local administration, education, health, etc., But all security matters still lie with the Israeli government, and Israel has often enforced itself here as well, where Palestinian Authority is supposed to have 100% control. In Area B, which roughly accounts for 22% of West Bank's territory, there is joint control of Israel and Palestinian Authority. In some subjects, Palestinian Authority has been given the right to self-govern, but Israel exercises control in security matters, police, etc. And as I said, Israel has been extending the policing powers even into Area A, where it is not supposed to exercise that control. And Area C, which is the majority of the area, 60% of West Bank's territory, remains under full Israeli control. So you can see how even Oslo Accords was subverted and how Israel has often exercised its greater control and enforced its own will on the West Bank region. Now, in these areas that you see in West Bank, Israel has been very actively pushing for illegal Jewish settlements where hardcore radical Jewish settlers are pushed into these areas. They even engage in violence against Palestinians, evict them from their homes and entire communities, and Jewish settlers are taking over these territories in West Bank. Now, this is globally condemned at the UN. India even has a stand against this illegal Jewish settlement pushed by Israel. So now Israel is bringing some big legal changes which could change the very face of West Bank in the coming years. According to the proposal approved by the Security Cabinet of Israeli government, Jewish settlements would essentially get more support from Israel from now onwards. All the land registration details which were not available in the public domain before will now be made public so that the Jewish settlers can look up the land record details, identify which land they want to take, makes it easier for the Jewish settlements to push out the Palestinian population from the West Bank region. Apart from this, under previous rules, which were framed by the then Jordanian government when Jordan controlled West Bank before 1967, Jewish people could not own land in West Bank. This was modified by Israel after it occupied West Bank to allow only companies or entities to buy land. Jewish individuals could never buy land in West Bank. Now, this is being changed for the first time. So, in places like Judea or Samaria, which has a lot of historical, cultural significance, Israel is allowing Jewish individuals as well to buy land. This is going to be a very big change. Previously, only companies based out of West Bank could buy the land. And now, Jewish settlers, individuals can also buy the land by looking up the land record details. In fact, human rights organizations and UN related entities they have reported a big surge in targeted violence against Palestinians in West Bank, especially after October 7, 2023. After the deadly terror attack by Hamas and the start of the Gaza war, Israel has been accused of using disproportionate force even in West Bank as well. According to reports from the UN Office of the High Commissioner on Refugees, the reports are quite shocking. And the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, they report that more than 800 Palestinians have been killed just in West Bank alone, including hundreds of children by some of the violent radical Jewish settlers. They're known to engage in targeted violence against the Palestinian population. Recently, there was a report tabled which shows that around six local Palestinian communities were completely evicted in the northern Jordan Valley, and Jewish settlements are coming up over here. So these legal changes which are being made by Israel will simply make it easier for Jewish settlers to expand the settlements in contravention of international law. It goes against the two-state solution of the UN, it goes against the Oslo Accords and undermines the right of Palestinians to self-govern and to have an independent state for themselves. That is why the Muslim nations have come out in a very strong manner, adopted a resolution condemning these changes by Israel. Now, moving on page number 4, there's an article that focuses on bonded labor in India. See, yesterday, the 9th of February, we marked the 50th anniversary of the adoption and enforcement of the Bonded Labor Abolition Act. The Bonded Labor System Abolition Act of 1976, enacted by the Indian Parliament, which finally brought an end to this horrific practice, which had led to systematic abuse of India's poor population by landlords, by money lenders. This horrific system was legally abolished on the 9th of February in 1976. So we have marked the 50th anniversary. It's been 50 years of abolishing bonded labor. But the shocking reality is that bonded labor continues to flourish, continues to exist even today, especially in states like West Bengal. In West Bengal, there are hundreds of brick factories where poor families, which have fallen under the debt burden, maybe their ancestors or many years ago or previous generations, they would have borrowed loans from money lenders. And those who can't repay the loans, right, they would be forced into this bonded labor system, including their entire families, including the old age people and children as well, are dragged into the bonded labor system, where they are forced to work for the landlords and money lenders for years together without any pay, without any wages. This system continues primarily in the brick factories of West Bengal, where poor people from Bihar as well, from West Bengal, they're often dragged into this system. And because of their indebtedness, they're pushed into bonded labor and exploited and abused for decades together. You find this existing in Tamil Nadu as well, especially in the jewelry industry near Chennai. Also in the firecracker industry as well in Sivakasi. In Tamil Nadu also, you see bonded labor existing, where poor families are subjugated, oppressed, and exploited for years and decades just because they had borrowed loans from money lenders and they could not repay them back. So this colonial medieval era practices, right? It has been abolished and yet it continues to exist on the ground. So, on this 50th anniversary, it becomes important to know the key provisions of this act. So, under the Bonded Labor System Abolition Act of 1976, the practice was declared as illegal and completely abolished. Because under the Indian Constitution, under Article 23, it mandates the prohibition of trafficking and forced labor. Forced labor of any kind is constitutionally prohibited and secured as a fundamental right. So, through the law in 1976, a legal ban was placed and it defines what constitutes a bonded labor. So, if a debtor who has borrowed loans, who has been unable to repay the loan to the creditor, if they are forced into such exploitative employment, to a formal or an informal contract, where the whole family is made indebted to the creditor and made to work for zero to little wages, right, and abused and exploited. Any such labor practice is labeled as bonded labor system, and it stands explicitly prohibited under the law. The district authorities have the responsibility, the district magistrate or the district collector will have to monitor these incidents and take strict action. There are district level vigilance committees to keep an eye on bonded labor system, which might exist in rural pockets. And those who are engaging in this practice, the creditors who are continuing in bonded labor, they face strict punishment with a jail term of up to 3 years, along with penalties. So the creditors, if they use this system, they can go to a jail. They can be punished with a jail term. And the bonded laborers will be liberated by the district authorities by using the power of the law, and they will be rehabilitated. The state has a dedicated scheme. There is a central sector scheme for rehabilitation of bonded laborers, under which compensation is given to the victims. And also training is provided so they can take up some other livelihood opportunity or employment opportunity. So they are settled by the district administration, and under the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, there is a legal provision which makes this a cognizable criminal offense. Section 143 penalizes trafficking and forced labor and fulfills the commitment of Article 23 of the Constitution. So, despite having these provisions in place, the practice continues in different parts of the country. The next article on page 13, the RBI has instructed commercial banks to not mandate collateral for medium, small, and micro enterprises for loans up to 20 lakhs. This is a new directive that the RBI has issued to the banking sector. The goal is to facilitate easier loans without the need for providing a collateral. Whenever you borrow a loan from a bank, you're expected to provide a collateral, right? It could be in the form of gold or any precious metal. It could be in the form of your land and property, right? So providing collateral is something which can become a constraint, and it could limit the growth of the MSME sector, particularly the small, micro, and the medium enterprises. So, to facilitate formal credit through formal banking channels to the MSME industry and to provide easier funding up to 20 lakh rupees, the RBI has relaxed these conditions regarding collateral, which previously was taken by the banks. So now, even without seeking a collateral mandatorily, they can extend loans up to 20 lakhs, and this will facilitate the Prime Minister Employment Generation Program, which is implemented by the KVIC. It will essentially enable smaller enterprises to take loans up to 10 lakh, 20 lakh rupees and create more job opportunities and facilitate more employment. So the whole idea is to push the MSME sector to borrow more with no collateral up to 20 lakhs and thus aid in job creation at the grassroots level. Next, topic number 6. India has confirmed that under the FTA which we have recently signed with European Union, the carbon border adjustment mechanism, there is no relief for steel exports in particular, and the government would come in to support the steel industry if they face any negative effect from the carbon border adjustment mechanism. In fact, we have studied the CBAM in our previous sessions as well, if you remember. So, if you're new, I'll just tell you what is the carbon border adjustment mechanism. The European Union has brought out a sort of emission tax or a carbon tax on imports. It's called CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. This is a form of tax that European Union is levying on imports based on their emissions in the country where the goods are produced. Let's say steel exports are being sent from India to EU market. In the production of steel in India, there would be some emissions involved. So based on that emissions, some taxes would be levied, additional taxes by the EU customs, which will increase the cost of Indian steel being imported into the EU market. It will reduce the competitiveness as well. So EU calls it an environmental action, a climate action necessary to curb emissions across the world. But India has opposed it because EU is using the trade route and tariffs to meddle with climate policies which are supposed to be the sovereign right of the respective countries. So this could adversely affect Indian exports to EU market, and we have long taken a stand against carbon border adjustment mechanism. So under the FTA, which was recently signed, the CBAM has not been addressed. As in, the CBAM will not be waived off for Indian exports. Rather, the CBAM will remain. The only concession is that India will get the same status as any other most favored nation of European Union. For example, EU considers United States as a most favored nation. So India will get the same treatment. So whatever levies are imposed on EU trade partners under carbon border adjustment mechanism, the same tariffs will apply on Indian goods as well when they enter the European market. So there is no additional relief given to India. India is not exempted from CBAM. So it will apply to India, but it will be at the same level as Europe will apply on other trade partners like United States. The most favored nation treatment would be given to India. That's the only relief. So, India has announced that the government would now step in to provide support to the steel industry, to steel exports, because this is the sector which will be the most hit. Since there is no relief from the carbon border adjustment mechanism taxes, steel exports from India to EU can be hit. So, Government of India has now officially announced that the government would be stepping in to provide some sort of support in the form of subsidies, maybe, or a rebate on these taxes to help cut down the cost for the industry. Coming to topic number 7. Yesterday, we spoke about India Greece defense relations and the maritime naval ties. We spoke about important ports in Greece and the talks between the defense ministers. The talks have yielded some positive results. So let's see what has been agreed upon with regard to the defense partnership between India and Greece. Please remember, India and Greece, they are two of the oldest maritime powers in the world, going back to ancient times. Both India and Greece have had significant maritime prowess. We even spoke about how Piraeus port used to be a link between ancient India and ancient Greece. How we are looking to revive the Piraeus port and make it part of the IMEC corridor. And how last year Indian Navy conducted an exercise at the Salamis naval base that faces the Mediterranean Sea. So our ties are really growing with Greece, and this is a strategy to even counter Turkey in the Mediterranean region. Turkey, which has been openly hostile to India by aligning with Pakistan, is being actively countered by India engaging with the rivals of Turkey, such as Greece and Cyprus. So the two countries have further stepped up the defense partnership following the talks between their defense ministers. The focus is on closer defense collaboration, defense cooperation in the field of arms and weapons development and defense production. In fact, the two countries have agreed to align the goals of Atmanirbhar Bharat with the Defense Reforms Agenda 2030 of Greece. Just like India is focusing on indigenization and domestic defense production under Atmanirbhar Bharat, similarly, Greece has a plan, a defense reform plan called Agenda 2030, under which it is focusing on indigenization. So the goals of India Greece align together to focus on joint defense production, defense cooperation, and we share similar goals, security goals across the Mediterranean and the Indo Pacific. So these targets have been reiterated, and a bilateral military cooperation plan has been adopted for 2026. So we might see greater military engagement between the two sides, especially more naval military exercises. But what is more important is that following the talks between the defense ministers, Greece has agreed to place a liaison officer from its navy, from the Hellenic Navy, at the Information Fusion Center for Indian Ocean region in Gurugram. See, the IFC IOR, Information Fusion Center for Indian Ocean region, it's a key maritime intelligence hub that is located in Gurugram on the outskirts of Delhi. It's like a national command control center for maritime intelligence, maritime domain awareness, which is operated by Indian Navy. After the 2611 Mumbai attacks, India launched the Coastal Radar program under the then Manmohan Singh government. So India has set up a series of coastal radar network across the entire coastline of India, covering the island territories of Andaman and Lakshadweep as well. We've extended this project to friendly foreign countries like Mauritius, Seychelles, and the others. So all the radar data, which can track the movement of vessels across the Indian Ocean, is fed into regional command centers of the Navy at Kochi, for example, Mumbai, Chennai. And finally, it is all collated at a national command center, which is IFC IOR in Gurugram. So this facility of Indian Navy is a pivotal nodal center for maritime domain awareness and maritime intelligence for the entire Indian Ocean region. In fact, it has become so pivotal that many foreign navies, which are friendly to India, they have stationed their liaison officers to coordinate with Indian Navy so that there can be sharing and exchange of maritime intelligence and facilitate joint operations if required. So Greece has become the latest country to deploy its liaison officers at IFC IOR. Now, coming to the prelim section, last two topics for today. Let's quickly wrap up the discussion. Topic number 8. India has already started buying oil from Venezuela, and according to reports which are emerging, it appears that India is indeed cutting back on Russian oil procurement. So there are two different topics to understand here. See, recently, Indian refiners have signed back to back deals with Venezuelan oil suppliers. Now, please understand, Venezuela has the world's largest oil deposits, the largest known oil reserves in the world. So, Venezuela produces a very unique type of oil. It's a heavy crude, which is produced in the Orinoco Basin, where the Orinoco River flows through in Venezuela into the Caribbean. It's the Orinoco Basin and Delta, which is rich in oil deposits. And the type of crude found here is heavy crude, which is very hard to process. It's more expensive and difficult to process as well because of the viscosity and thickness. So, this is the kind of oil you find in Venezuela, in the Orinoco Basin. So, India previously used to buy Venezuelan oil. Because don't forget, Venezuela is a member of OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. As India has sought to diversify its energy sources, Indian refiners and Indian oil companies have been buying oil from Venezuela in the past. So until 2019-20, Indian refiners were buying oil from Venezuela as well. But we stopped in 2019-20 because of the American sanctions. under the first presidency of Donald Trump, as the Trump administration targeted Nicolas Maduro's regime and brought these crippling sanctions similar to the sanctions on Iran, US forced all the other countries, including India, to stop buying Venezuelan oil. So in 2019-20, India stopped buying Venezuelan oil for a brief period. We tried resuming it in 2023-2024. India abided by the sanctions, and later we resumed buying Venezuelan oil in 2023-24. But again, we had to stop because of the pressure exerted by United States under its sanctions regime. Is that clear? So until 2019-20, we were buying Venezuelan oil, but we stopped it because of US sanctions and diplomatic pressure. We resumed briefly in 2023, but it was again stopped in 2024 because of US sanctions and US pressure. So now, after United States kidnapped Nicolas Maduro, and now that there is a favorable regime in place, and US has exercised control over the energy resources of Venezuela, it has been urging countries like India to start buying Venezuelan oil. And this has also been mentioned as part of the India-US interim trade agreement, which was recently announced by President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. So there has been a lot of concern, criticism as well, whether India has compromised on its independent foreign policy. Because under the trade deal, it appears that India has agreed for US to monitor India's energy procurement. Russia, which has become our top oil supplier, which has been facing American and Western sanctions as a result of the Ukraine war, right? It accounted for nearly 38% of the total crude oil imports of India in 2024. But because of American pressure under Trump presidency, we have started cutting it down. And now Russian share has dropped to 25% of India's overall crude oil imports. Looking at the statements what Trump has made and his administration officials have made, it appears that India has made a commitment, though India has never confirmed it, because this question was posed to government officials, including Piyush Goyal and the foreign secretary. But both of them have evaded the question. There is a related article in today's paper as well, where the media has asked the foreign secretary, Vikram Misri, that has India made a legal commitment under the trade deal to US that we will stop buying Russian oil and we'll start buying Venezuelan oil. So the foreign secretary has evaded the question by saying that India always tries to diversify energy sources, keeping in mind national interest and energy security. So there's nothing new about this. So there was no denial or confirmation whether India has agreed to stop buying Russian oil completely to bring it down to 0%. But reports from American media and statements from the US side shows that India might have made such a commitment for a brief period till the Ukraine war stops, because that is Trump's priority. And Trump's administration believes that it is India which has been essentially helping Russia to fuel the Ukraine war. So they believe this pressure will be temporary. And it appears from American reports and American statements that India might have agreed temporarily to halt Russian procurement and maybe resume it after the Ukraine war comes to a stop. But until then, we need to see whether India has actually confirmed this or not, right? Because there has been no official word from the Indian side. Now, Indian refiners, as I told you, they've started buying Venezuelan oil in the last few days. First was Reliance Industries, which entered into a big contract. And now Indian Oil Corporation and HPCL, they've also signed a very big deal. And by April, Venezuelan oil will start reaching Indian refineries. And India has the capability to process heavy crude. Now, please note down for your prelims the term Merey crude. UPSC might ask you a question based on this. What is Merey crude? Merey crude is the benchmark crude standard of Venezuela. It refers to the heavy tar oil produced in the Orinoco Basin, the Orinoco oil delta, right? And it is part of the OPEC basket. There are different benchmark standards for crude oil prices, like Brent crude, for example, right? Similarly, we have another benchmark standard, which is Merey crude. And this is a Venezuelan benchmark standard for heavy crude produced in Orinoco Basin. Please remember this basic fact. And trust me, this can be very important for your prelims exam. Now, coming to the last topic for today. On page 13, there's a very interesting article that refers to a term known as IaaS. Not your audit and account service. This refers to infrastructure as a service. See, you have heard of software as a service, which we studied yesterday as well, right? We spoke about SaaS, the SaaS industry, software as a service industry, when we spoke about the cloud co-work platform of Anthropic. So what is this IaaS? It stands for Infrastructure as a Service. Now, cloud infrastructure, which is used by service providers, governments, private players across the world for storing data. This infrastructure is referred to as IaaS, Infrastructure as a Service. Any IT computing facility, it could be data processing centers, it could be the mining centers, or it could be cloud centers. Any such IT infrastructure, right, which is provided as a service where you can rent IT infrastructure, hire the services for a short duration. Such platforms are referred to as infrastructure as a service. So today, there is a huge global demand for cloud facilities. And there is a sovereign demand which is coming up from governments across the world. Sovereign cloud spending is surging across the world, according to a report. And this could become a $80 billion market. We are seeing a 36% surge in government spending on cloud infrastructure. So governments might be setting up their own cloud facilities, or they might be renting it out from another private service provider. Now, why do we see a global surge in sovereign cloud spending? This is because of all the geopolitical tensions related to data and data governance. See, today, US and China, the two major digital powers, they have greater control over data flow. And today, as you know, data is the new gold, it's the new oil, right? Be it monetization of data and for data security. And this has a national security angle as well. Various countries which are concerned about US and Chinese control over data flow, they are prioritizing setting up local data centers, or what we call as data localization. So there is a global push by governments across the world, including in India, even European governments and West Asian governments. Many countries are becoming more concerned about storing data locally within their borders. They don't want sensitive data of their citizens to leave the borders. This will help them better monetize the data, translate it into better economic benefits, and also ensure the privacy and security, thus protecting a national security goal. Since data has a geopolitical dimension today, there is a greater demand for data localization. And that's why sovereign cloud spending is surging, and it could become a $80 billion industry. So providing such facilities, IT infrastructure, is called as infrastructure as a service. Is that clear? So on this note, I bring my analysis to an end. I hope it was an interesting, insightful session. If you benefited, please let me know in the comments, press the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That is it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.